And a further quote from the report: "We believe that the reason the John Birch Society has attracted so many members is that it simply appeared to them to be the most effective, indeed the only organization through which they could join in a national movement to learn the truth about the communist menace and then take some positive, concerted action to prevent its spread," unquote. This report also goes on to verify what I have already told you, namely that the attack against the John Birch Society commenced with an article in the People's World, California communist paper. Now, in the light of what I have just related, you will understand my feelings when people would ask how I felt about the John Birch Society. Because of the amazing effect and the effective propaganda against them, it has been very unpopular to defend this group. I can remember when it was unpopular to defend my own church. Nevertheless, as soon as I learned what the communists and liberals were doing to the John Birch Society, I felt a deep indignation that this should happen to any non-political, patriotic group of American citizens. I felt it was dishonest, immoral, and crass hypocrisy. I still feel that way. One liberal congressman attacked the society, claiming it was rotten to the core. Other influential liberals said they objected to the society's methods. If it was rotten to the core, the California Senate fact-finding investigators couldn't discover it. Some of the finest, best-informed Americans I know have endorsed the society and its program, including a number of former FBI agents and officials, counter spies, intelligence and security officers, and so on. Many nationally prominent, patriotic Americans serve without pay on its council. As to its methods, the report describes the society as a study group organization designed to, quote, "first learn the facts about communism and then implement that knowledge with effective and responsible action," unquote. Now, what is wrong with such methods as these? It was communists and American liberals who objected to these methods because they were effective. They turned out to be traditional American methods that I could find no fault with. Even in my own church, I found a certain amount of confusion. I heard people say that the LDS Church was opposed to the John Birch Society. This may come in part, at least, as a result of a statement made by the First Presidency 3 years ago. However, when President McKay discovered that this statement was being misinterpreted and certain people were quoting it to try and prove the LDS Church was opposing the John Birch Society, he authorized a clarifying statement. This statement appeared in the official church newspaper for March 16, 1963, and says, quote, "The church is not opposing the John Birch Society or any other organization of like nature, and that members of the church are free to join anti-communist organizations," unquote. The statement also says that only one man, President David O. McKay, speaks for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on matters of policy. Just as a matter of interest, you may like to know in a few words what the John Birch Society is and what it stands for, so that you will have a little better idea why some of us have risen to its defense. Actually, what would be better for you to do would be to read some of their literature for yourself. Everything the Birch Society publishes is available to member and non-member alike, and their headquarters at Belmont, Massachusetts, will be happy to provide this literature, including some other free introductory material. The Society takes its name from one of the greatest heroes of World War II, Captain John Birch, who was murdered by the Chinese communists 10 days after the war. The Society attempts, through an educational and monthly action program, to use every legal and moral means practicable to preserve our inspired Constitution. These programs have had a real impact against the conspiracy. The various programs are purely suggestive, and the members are cautioned never to do anything that goes contrary to their conscience and judgment. The Society is not a political organization. It never endorses a candidate or contributes to candidates. It encourages its members, whether they be Democrats, Republicans, or independents, to study the issues and candidates in the light of our Constitution and the threats to it, and then govern themselves accordingly. Among other things, the Society is for a balanced budget, for the Monroe Doctrine, for letting the states solve their own problems, for letting the states solve their own problems. It is against foreign aid to the communists. Against the Marxist graduated income tax. And against the federal government competing with tax-paying free enterprise. In a sentence, the John Birch Society believes in less centralized government, more personal responsibility, and a better world. I do not belong to the John Birch Society, but I have always defended this group, just as I do not belong to but have defended the American Farm Bureau, the DAR, the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and any other patriotic group trying to alert Americans to the socialist communist threat. I have also defended J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. When my son Reed was invited to be a state coordinator for the John Birch Society, he asked me if he should accept it. I had read the Blue Book and other basic materials of the Society. I had met Mr. Welch and other leaders and members. I had read Mr. Welch's famous letter, which has since been published in book form entitled The Politician. I knew Reed would be enrolling in an unpopular cause. I also knew he would receive a certain amount of vilification if he took this job. Nevertheless, I told him to go ahead if he thought this was a most effective way to defend the Constitution and fight the socialist communist menace. I would have given him equal encouragement if he had been considering the FBI or any of our national patriotic organizations dedicated to the fight against the godless conspiracy which threatens all we hold dear. When he joined, I expressed my opinion that I was convinced that the John Birch Society was the most effective non-church organization in our fight against creeping socialism and godless communism. I also stated that I admired Reed's courage and applauded his decision. Now, some people, I'm sure well-meaning, have told me this was not good strategy, but I disagree. I feel it is always good strategy to stand up for the right. To stand up for the right, even when it is unpopular. Perhaps I should say especially when it is unpopular. I had to make this same decision all over again when President David O. McKay received an invitation from former Congressman John Rousseau asking that I be authorized to give a patriotic speech at a testimonial dinner for Robert Welch. President McKay, after careful consideration, told me I should take the talk and that I had his permission and blessing. And so the invitation was accepted. This talk was given at the Hollywood Palladium, September 23rd, 1963. Nearly 2,000 heard my talk that night, and 4,000 Kiwanians heard a similar message the following day when I spoke at their annual convention. Both talks dealt with the preservation of the Constitution and the need to resist the communist threat. At the Welch testimonial dinner, I commended the John Birch Society and encouraged them to protect the principles of liberty throughout the land. Of course, as all of you know, this talk brought an immediate outcry from some liberal elements in Washington. These voices said that I, as a church official, had no business speaking at the Robert Welch dinner. They said it was making me controversial. Patrick Henry and the Founding Fathers were also controversial.